The second house in astrology is everything you hold dear. It's your money, your resources, your possessions, and your sense of self-worth. Let's go on a tour of this house and explore what it means to have each planet in it. My name is Anastasia. I'm a traditional Western astrologer specializing in natal, relationship, and predictive astrology. If you're new here, please subscribe to my channel, leave me a like or a comment, and if you'd like to book a reading, there's a link down below for that as well. So I have done a general video talking about the significance of houses. Definitely check that out before you watch that video. And let me know if you have any planets in the second house. I would love to know what kind of planets you have there. Before I talk about the significance of the second house, also wanted to tell you that no house is ever empty. There's always a sign that is on the cusp of your second house, and the planet that rules that sign is very similar to having that planet in the house. For example, if your second house is Aries, if you have Aries on the cusp of the second house, the energy connected to your resources, money, and self-worth will be very similar to having Mars in your second house, because Mars rules Aries. So you may also want to listen to the ruler of that sign to get a fuller, bigger picture. So the second house answers the question of what do you have? It describes all of your movable possessions. Your house, for example, your physical property is not here. Your physical property is in the fourth house. So second house is your money, your dresses, your piano, your car that you drive, right? Like your computer, your phone. It's everything that you can pick up and take with you, right, when you're moving away. Pieces of art, furniture, clothes, etc. And it's a succedent house, which means it succeeds. It's kind of like the next in order to rise after the first house. So the ascendant rises, right? And then after the ascendant, you have the second house rising. So it's the next in order to become angular. So it has a little bit of that quality. You know, planets in the succedent houses, they support the first house. Like they have that quality of support. And basically the planets in the second house are all the resources that you have, because first house is you, your identity, and second house is what are those things that say that this is you, right? Like what is your phone? What is your like if you have a car that is associated with you, if you have a style that is associated with you. So it's all of the resources that are supportive of you. And the same as, let's say, fifth house, it's like your children, your creative pursuits, things that support your family life, for example. If it's like the eighth house, it's supporting your seventh house, it's resources of your partner, etc. It's a material house, so it's very much like your things, but there's also a more kind of psychological sense to this house, because it also deals with your values and things that you like to acquire, things that you like to gather and accumulate, right? To feel better about yourself, because your possessions reflect how you feel about yourself, right? Like, do you tend to spend money on travel? Do you spend money on luxuries? Do you spend money? Do you like treat your friends? It's a lot of times it's kind of like what is worth your time and what is worth your effort. And yeah, like, are you collecting diplomas, right? This would also be like your sense of self-worth comes from diplomas or whatever else it might be. And it also might have a deeper sense of like how our desires and fears and hopes are embodied in the things that we own. And finally, second house is the dark house, meaning that it's not making any aspects to the ascendant, because the two are side by side, first and the second house, and there is no traditional aspect between them. And planets placed in the dark house oftentimes are harder to see, so there might be a sense of like it's not always easy to associate with the energy of the second house, And there might be things slipping our attention, because second house is money, and money can be the source of all evil, right? So maybe you forget to pay your bill and then suddenly you owe 10 grand, or you forget to, like you borrow money and then you forget to pay it back, or you don't have money to pay it back and it ruins your friendship. So there's a bit of that energy in the second house of like, if you don't pay attention, you may struggle, right? Like it might bring challenges into your life. So let's talk about every single planet and see how it affects you. For example, if you have Sun in your second house, Sun is identity, Sun is your light, and second house being the house of things, there will be a certain exploration of identity in relation to things and possession. So people with the Sun in the second house usually own things that are very much indicative of who they are, right? Like if let's say as an astrologer, right? Like you have lots of astrology books. A musician would like have a piano. People who have their Sun, let's say in Sagittarius in the second house, maybe they have like all the things from their journeys and like travels. I studied with a Libra in the second house, and every time we would like join the class on Zoom, you could see everything that is important to him in the background of his Zoom. There were like astrology books and like guitars and some other things that were like very clearly like this person is spiritual but also a musician. It doesn't mean that you're materialistic, right? Or you're obsessed with like spending money on expensive things, but you own things that remind you of who you are. They remind you of your identity and life purpose. You're likely to be quite practical, so chances of you losing track of your finances are lower, like you're more focused on things that you have. And you may enjoy spending on things that are expensive or things that are luxurious. And it's also likely that things that you kind of likely have like a good eye for value, so things that you invest into may grow in value over time and bring you money back. You are likely very generous with people you love. And because second house also describes how we make money, there might be a creative career, right? Like the friend that I described is a musician. So there might be a sense of like making money through something where you put yourself forth and you make yourself visible. So being a musician, being a teacher of some kind, or a source, like a source of light, even like performing, doing like YouTube, anything where people listen to you or watch you is very much Sun in the second house. And it's important, it's important to watch out for a tendency to just like gather possessions to make yourself feel better, because your identity is not what you own, it's so much more. For those with the Moon in the second house, Moon is our emotions, Moon is our security. So when you place the Moon in the house of money and values, there is a very emotional need to have enough money. You kind of really desire to have security financially. It's important for your well-being, right? So it's also similarly to people with the Sun in the second house. I think people with the Moon in the second house will seek to be aware of what's happening with their finances. Of course, Moon is emotional, so you're likely also an emotional spender. And because the Moon goes through ups and downs, it goes through different cycles, it waxes, it wanes, the same might be true of your finances. There might be very much like, sometimes it's a full moon, sometimes it's a new moon. So like there is a little bit of that fluctuation that comes to your finances. Moon also represents the mother, so your mom could be someone who's very financially oriented and very kind of like maybe encouraged you to pay attention to your money, or she was herself an example of someone who was like quite frugal and serious with money. Making money through lunar pursuits, like anything that deals with the public, anything that deals with nurturing other people, even being I know someone with Venus and Taurus, Moon in the second house, and she is a nail technician. Like she does manicures and other things, like working with beauty. being a nurse, being a chef, doing something that caters and helps other people is important. And you're likely to own things that you're emotionally attached to. Like you may be someone who holds on to keepsakes, you know, like tickets from places that you've gone to a long time ago. For those with Mercury in the second house, Mercury is what we think about. Mercury is what's, you know, what we talk about. So you may talk about money quite a lot, maybe for work. Maybe you are in business consultancy, right? A business consultant, a financial analyst, something like that. Like your mind is very much turned towards issues of resources and substance. And you may also be quite insightful when it comes to money, kind of like good at knowing opportunities, at being a good salesperson, having like a business-oriented mind with a lot of ideas. Mercury is also like a trickster, and Mercury is connected to duality because it rules two mutable signs, right? Two double-bodied signs, Gemini and a Virgo. So sometimes you may have two sources of income. It's quite possible. There might be quick, like swift changes of fortune where money comes in, money goes out. Mercury is the fastest planet other than the moon. So it has a sense of that, like, you know, rapid changes to your resources. And spending money on things that better your life, spending money on technology, spending money on books, travel, the latest tech maybe is quite likely, I think, with Mercury in your second house. You may also have an ability to earn money through intellectual enterprises, not only, you know, like business, but yeah, like sales, teaching, writing, advertising, anything that requires quick thinking is possible. For those with Venus in the second house, Venus represents things that we desire, and Venus also likes to bring things together. So there might be, when it comes to desire, you likely desire beauty products. You may spend a lot of your money on like beauty and art and kind of aesthetically pleasing things that may later grow in value because Venus has a good eye for beauty. It's also a lovely energy for working with a partner professionally and maybe even gaining more after you come into a partnership. Like, you know, when you get married, maybe like your partner brings resources to you. You may prosper through your social connections and through creative pursuits, very much. With Venus in the second house, working as a hairdresser, as a manicurist, is that a term? Manicure specialist, anything, yeah, like being an art collector, there might be a lot of possibilities. A tattoo artist, right? Like anything that deals with creativity and brings you resources. There might be a love of luxury and love of expensive things, especially, let's say, if it's like Venus and Leo in the second house. You would definitely want things that are like brand names or quality things. For those with Mars in the second house, people with Mars in the second house are likely to be quite aggressive and competitive when it comes to resources. They would not like to work with other people. Of course, like it's okay to work with others as clients, but I think they would want to be independent and have their own agenda and, you know, like not necessarily consult other people. So having a business is great because you are competitive and you may make money through competing with others because it's Mars, right? Like Mars is aggression. There might be fights connected to money, and in order to avoid fighting for money with people in your life, right? Like it's better to fight for money in a competitive marketplace. There might be financial crises in your life, but then it's also likely that you quickly recover. Mars also has a little bit of that like impulsive quality when it comes to spending money. You might be burning through cash sometimes, right? Mars is a very hot planet, so that sense of like quickly buying things and then not having enough money, but then going at it again with that new energy and making new money. So like a lot of kind of interesting dynamics with Mars in the second house. Watch out for, there's a danger with Mars to like lose money because of hastiness and jumping into things, taking unnecessary risks, and fire. So maybe don't keep your money next to your stove. I don't know who does that, but you know, I warned you. For those with Jupiter in the second house, Jupiter is a planet of luck, right? So there's oftentimes good luck when it comes to money. Money may come to you without you needing to think about it too much. There might be a talent for financial dealings, kind of like a natural. And I think you're very generous. You're a very generous person with Jupiter in the second house. And because you give it so easily, it comes back to you easily as well. It's also highly likely that with Jupiter in the second house, you prefer spiritual things more so than material things. Because Jupiter cares about experiences. Jupiter wants to learn. Jupiter wants to be uplifted somehow. So I think you care about those things a lot more than about material things. But there's also a sense of possibly with Jupiter in the second house of being overly indulgent, like maybe, you know, spending money on like lavish things and just kind of being reckless with money a little bit. I don't think you should worry about it too much because Jupiter will probably give you more money if you spend too much. And oftentimes people with Jupiter in the second also prosper through their social connections and through relationships they have with other people. You can make money, or, you know, some of the good careers for you would deal with travel, education, legal sphere, life coaching, dealing with other people somehow, dealing with other cultures because you're very tolerant and open-minded and friendly. So anywhere where you have to like uplift, inspire, open the eyes of other people is a great field. For those with Saturn in the second house, you may have dealt with difficulty when it comes to money, maybe early in life. Maybe there was a lack of resources, a lack of finances, and it's also possible that that created some kind of fear in you about not having enough. So Saturn is tough when younger, and then as you get older, Saturn kind of like mellows out and things become easier. So I think as you get older, you will be better with money, and money might take a long time to come in, but then it's also really hard for it to like lose, like it's going to be hard for you to lose it because you have that also naturally steadiness, stability, and you focusing on the long term. You may be also kind of like thrifty and careful about spending your money. Watch out that you're not just being driven by fears, right? Like go off of your experiences and see that you have the money-making ability, so you don't always have to hold on to it so tightly. It's a very important area of your life, for sure. Your finances, having enough money is very important and probably connected to the early life experiences. Because second house also deals with like self-worth, there might be certain doubts connected to that. And you definitely want to make sure you're not, you know, fixing it by having more money stored away. You want to try to find joy in the work that you're doing, in the connections that you have with other people. Don't sit on your pile of gold because most likely it's not going to bring you much joy. And professionally, people with Saturn in the second house can be great auditors, managers, producers, anything that requires supervision, accountants possibly too, because you're good at knowing, you know, what's worth and what's not worth spending on. For those with Uranus in the second house, you can make money on very Uranian things. Like you can be an engineer or an astronaut or someone who's like a streamer making money playing video games or making money on stock market. You have very unusual original ideas, maybe also quite visionary when it comes to money, but Uranus is not very stable. So your finances are likely to go through ups and downs. There might be times when you suddenly come into owning a lot, but then at the other point, maybe you lose a lot. So try to have some kind of stability to it, you know, like maybe open a 401k, a Roth IRA, try to diversify so you don't end up in a tough spot when it comes to finances. Uranus describes things that make us unique and make us different. So with Uranus in the second house, you may choose to own things that are quite unusual, right? Like collectible cars, or having like, also buying things that are like brand new. I don't know, like the coolest iPhone, the most different sneakers, curious things, fun things. And you also likely have an unusual eye for value. If you have Neptune in the second house, you're likely not taking things very seriously. Finance might like slip your attention sometimes because Neptune is kind of foggy, you know, like you don't care about the amount of money you have. You don't care about the most expensive thing. You likely want something that has value for you, or something that connects you to the ether, to like the larger thing. When I first started studying astrology with Austin Koppak, he mentioned a client who was a rare coins collector, and he had Neptune in the second house. So it's very much like, you know, owning things that at this point, based on the value of the metal inside that coin, like it's not worth that much. But people who care about the past and the connection and the history, they will appreciate it. So with Neptune in the second, you might also have that sense of like being interested in things that are beautiful, creative, and have some kind of personal value for you. But of course, watch out for being, you know, too bad with money to a point that it works to your detriment. You are quite intuitive and imaginative when it comes to finances. So you can make money through creative pursuits, through spiritual things, even being like a writer. Working near water might bring you a lot of joy because Neptune is the planet connected to the boundless ocean. You're very generous, I think, with people you love, and you're happy to give a lot and maybe even donate to charity or volunteer or give your resources and time somehow otherwise. For those with Pluto in the second house, it's a little bit similar to Saturn. There may have been challenges growing up, financial challenges or some other kind of experiences that would have sabotaged your sense of self-worth. And of course, you know, not necessarily everything is always super dramatic with Pluto, but something made you be very careful when it comes to money, and you're very protective of your resources. You're not necessarily screaming from every corner, telling people how much money you have. You're very like, you know, private when it comes to those matters. And it's possible that this could have started early in life when like your parents were spending all the money, or your family lost something, so you would have experienced some kind of darkness connected to finances. It's also possible that you may be very possessive towards things or people, and you have very strong attachments to things and people, right? Like it's a little bit of that scorpionic quality when it comes to resources. There might be fears that are present in your life, consciously or unconsciously, fears of losing money, fears of finding yourself in a tough spot. So you want to be careful and make sure that you're not just, you know, allowing your entire life to be driven by fear and you're accumulating things because they're making you feel more secure. Because it's also quite likely, Pluto is the planet of transformation. It's also quite likely that you will go through some kind of transformations of careers and a sense of loss of resources, and, you know, maybe needing to start over again. And ultimately, I think Pluto in the second house is encouraging you to release that need to hold on to material things and pursue things that are making you more excited. The same, right? Like similarly, why is there losses when it comes to money or changes when it comes to money? Because you're meant to understand that there's more to life than finances. You can make money through Plutonian things, right? Things, shining light on things that are hidden. Research, therapy, consulting, astrology, working with the occult, helping people transform their pain, working with other people's money as well, being a forensic specialist or a therapist, which I already mentioned. And finally, for those with Chiron in the second house, Chiron is always a wound, right? Like we all have it somewhere in our chart, and Chiron usually represents something we are struggling with, but we can be also great healers and sources of insight when it comes to other people. So with Chiron in the second, there might be some kind of wounding or unhealthy relationship with money. Either you spend it very easily, you try to buy people's love, you don't know how to hold on to it, because usually there is like a lack of self-worth or lack of self-understanding. Maybe you saw your family do that. Maybe your parents, instead of hugging you, gave you 20 bucks and told you like, hey, go buy yourself a chocolate bar. So there might be like a sense of kind of unhealthy dynamic when it comes to resources. And maybe you're really good at helping other people and guiding other people and telling them how to take care of their own money, but you're struggling to deal with, to deal with their money, but you're struggling to deal with your own money. Maybe it's the opposite, right? Like maybe you're really good at saving, but then you're struggling to spend this money. Maybe there's a sense of like accumulating thing and like holding on to things in order to create that sense of protection, security, and love. So you want to make sure you're not, getting off balance, going into one side or the other side, and you're trying to have a healthy sense of self-worth and spending money in the proper way, where you're not just like, holding to it and not spending everything. Like trying to find balance could be tough, but it all starts with your belief in yourself. And maybe you start with helping other people deal with their resources and encouraging them to believe in themselves. And then through that, you also find peace and you come to love yourself. So this is it for the second house. We talked about all the planets and included Chiron in there. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.